All right, one of the toughest parts, I think, of dealing with governmental auditing is understanding the variety of governmental auditing reports you may have to deal with. So in this simulation, what we're going to be looking at is excerpts from different types of reports. You can see across the bottom of the screen here, I've got a number of different options. I have a traditional financial statement audit report. I have a couple times I can use single audit reports or yellow book reports. And I also have some specific schedules, and these might be required supplementary information based on a federal regulation or other statutes. So we have the schedule of findings and question costs. We also have the schedule of expenditures and federal awards. So what we're going to do is try to pick out key words and phrases in each of these questions to help us narrow it down. Now, for an exercise like this, it's so important to remember, there's no rule that says you have to go in order. I am, but you don't have to. Certainly, there's no problem with going and trying to find those questions that you feel may be more obvious or maybe an easier answer to find. Remember, for exam purposes, every time you put something in the right box, you're adding points to that score toward that goal of 75. So go for whatever points you think are the most obvious or the easiest. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first one here. So our first one says, our responsibility is to express an opinion on compliance. And that's really the key phrase there. Opinion on compliance. Where do you find that? Well, the only time you have to give an opinion on compliance is with a single audit act report. So we're going to go ahead and pick as our answer for that one of our two single audit reports. There we go. Let's look at our second one. As part of obtaining reasonable assurance about whether the entity's financial statements are free of material misstatement, we perform tests of its compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, so on and so forth. And then it goes on to say, however, providing an opinion on compliance with those provisions was not an objective of our audit and we're not going to do it. All right, so what's the key phrase there? Well, the idea that we are not providing an opinion on compliance, that it was not the objective of the audit. So where do we do that? Well, the correct answer for that is that's a yellow book report. That's when we're going to look at, and certainly as we're looking at the financial statements, we do test certain aspects of compliance. That's part of our routine of things we need to do, but it isn't going so far as to provide an opinion on compliance that we see with the Single Audit Act. So our answer here is going to be one of our yellow book reports. So we'll slide that on up to number 2. Okay, let's look at number 3. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the expenditures of federal awards. That's the key phrase. Whenever you see federal awards or any reference to federal awards, that's a pretty good giveaway that you're dealing with the Single Audit Act, because that's the whole point of the Single Audit Act. It's dealing with entities that receive a certain threshold amount of federal funding, federal awards. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and choose one of the Single Audit Act options. But one extra thing to note. Although it's the Single Audit Act, we're not talking about the specific single audit report. We're actually dealing with one of the schedules. Again, we're dealing with the expenditures of federal awards, and you'll notice that's one of our options as well. Now, you might say to me, well, wait a minute, Mike. If I realized that was the single audit report, what would happen if I picked it? Well, in this case, you will find there's another answer later where you're going to need the single audit report. So even if you got it wrong, if you're going through this and inadvertently selected that for number 3, it's not the end of the world, because you may recognize later, hey, I never used this, or you may want to always look at and say, well, is there a better answer? You know, some would even argue, well, this is part of the Single Audit Act. Remember, the examiners are always looking for the best answer. And in this case, that's the tightest, closest answer to what the question's asking. All right, let's look at number 4. Accordingly, we do not express an opinion on the effectiveness of internal control over compliance. Now, the key phrase here, and I'm going to underline it just to do something different, but it's internal control over compliance. Now, I want you to notice the difference here between number 1 and number 4. Number 4 talks about internal control over compliance. That is, how does the entity deal with making sure they're in compliance? Number 1 is actually giving an opinion about the compliance itself, and that's the key distinction. Why would we need to make that distinction? Well, this again is dealing with that Single Audit Act, that single audit report, because we want to make sure that the reader understands, look, we looked at compliance and we are giving an opinion about compliance. However, we're not giving an opinion about the entity's internal control regarding that compliance. We want to make sure that distinction is clear, which is why both 1 and 4 appear in that single audit report. So let's take a look at number 5. So number 5 says, in planning and performing our audit of the financial statements, we considered internal control over financial reporting to determine the audit procedures that are appropriate for expressing our opinion on financials, but not for expressing an opinion about internal control. Again, the key here is that distinction, not for the purpose of expressing an opinion on the effectiveness of internal control, right? This one you can actually connect back to number 2 because both talk about, well, we're trying to gain reasonable assurance, but this is not what we're doing. We want to make sure that the reader of the financials and the reader of this report understands we're doing this, but not so far as to do this. So this is another example of a yellow book report. So we'll move that one on up to number 5. All right. How about number 6? We have audited the accompanying financial statements of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the major funds, so on and so on and so on. This may sound familiar. We looked at something similar in one of our earlier skills practices. Anytime you see that long-winded list of units that we're reporting on, that appears in a standard, plain vanilla financial statement report. Okay. Well, I'm hopeful that number 7 has something to do with the schedule of findings and question costs. Let's look at it. The report includes audit findings such as significant deficiencies and material weaknesses in internal control, material noncompliance, and, well, look there, question costs. Well, that looks promising considering it's the schedule of findings. And oh yeah, there's findings up there. So pretty clearly what we're dealing with here is reporting on the schedule of findings and question costs. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what are some of the key phrases and keywords to look for in determining what kind of report it is. I recognize, and sitting here as I've gone through this content with students in the past, I know that there are very fine differences. Don't let that derail you. Again, the objective here is to maximize your points, certainly, but get as many right as you can. It is entirely likely that if you face a question like this, you might get 1 or 2 of these wrong. It would be very easy to mix it up. Don't let that dissuade you. All right? It's just important. The more of these you can kind of lock down in your mind, the more of them you should be able to get correct on the exam.